cases.
And that actually raises an interesting question. How are we doing in terms of coming up with the test? I believe there's supposed to be a test that will let people know whether they've had the virus even after they've had the virus. Because I've known a couple of friends of mine that were miserably sick. I mean, they had various sicknesses. They might have had a cold. They might have had a fever. And in retrospect, they think that they might have had the virus. Now, they never got diagnosed with the virus, and they don't know this for a fact. But they just, in retrospect, as they've heard some of these symptoms that people have had, they're like, well, maybe I had it, and my immune system defeated it for me, and I've weathered the storm. But that doesn't mean that they're not carrying it to other people. So do you know how far we are from getting those kind of tests? And is it true that they could have had the virus? Because I don't even know what time the virus came into the Americas and everything, because I just know that this was like people that were sick like around January and February and maybe even December. And I've known at least 5 or 6 people that in the retrospect, they're now wondering, did I have COVID-19? I mean, they're still walking and breathing, so they know that they did not have the fatal version, but they still don't know whether they had one of the versions that exists out there.
I think that's a great question. I actually think that we had a lot more cases, like you're saying, mild, bad, but mild, that have gone undiagnosed. And, before this shutdown, the world was really flat, right? It was anywhere in America, you could meet somebody who had been in China or India or Africa or London yesterday, right? It's a mobile country. There are 2 tests that we're talking about. So the one test is the nasal swab to see if you're shedding virus right now. So it's a really deep, it's exactly where your mother told you not to put anything in your nose. That's how deep it goes. And we take a swab from the way back of your nose, and we look for viral particles. And that's why sneezing, coughing is bad, because the virus is in the back of your nose, and it can come out with a lot of force when you do that. That will tell you, and that's about 70% accurate if you have the virus now. So the friends or the people who think they may have had the virus, what they want to know is, do they have antibodies to the virus? So do they have evidence in their blood that they've had the virus, they've built up an immune response, and in fact, we are hoping the people who a blood test shows that they've had the antibodies, they could be the first set of people who get to go back to work, because they are sort of immune to the virus as far as we understand it. So they are the safest to send back to work as we do like a slow roll reopening of the economy. So there's actually a really nice article in today's New York Times that's called "How Will We Know When It's Time to Reopen the Nation?" written by Aaron Carroll. And he says 4 points. He says hospitals should be able to safely treat all the patients who need hospitalization without the current crisis. Like right now, lobbies are turned into wards, like the whole hospital is upended. But in a normal course of events, the hospital should be able to treat these patients. The state needs to be able to test at least everybody who has the symptoms, if not like their friends or their first or second degree contacts. Third is the state should be able to monitor the confirmed cases and their contacts. So if you have coronavirus, the state should be able to go to your spouse, your business partner, the grocery store person you interacted with to see if they've got the virus. And then we have to make sure that the cases are really low for about 2 weeks before we do a slow roll of the economy. The next step for that is saying, the blood test seems to be there. It's in trials right now. Actually, speaking of the Durham Bulls, a lot of Major League Baseball teams have signed up to be tested, for their players and their staff to be tested for antibodies to see if they can then participate in these trials to use that plasma to help cure the patients who are really sick.
Oh, wow. So,
I know,
and what
it's
are
a lot
some
of information.
Definitely. And what are, because I've heard different ones, and some of them sound very simple, some of them sound very much more complicated. The way you're describing it, what are the hardcore symptoms that you know that you have COVID-19? Are there certain symptoms, like I said, we're in North Carolina and it's pollen season, so some people are definitely, having slight sneezes, slight colds, things of that nature. And is there a way to differentiate between, say, an allergy cold or a regular cold and COVID-19? Are there certain symptoms that are more strongly on a regular basis going to be associated with COVID-19?
Yeah, so that's a terrific question. So up here, it's gorgeous. The cherry blossoms and the magnolias are in bloom, and therefore everybody who's going to sneeze and cough is sneezing and coughing, right? So the allergies are kicking up because Mother Nature doesn't know we're in a pandemic. So normal allergy symptoms are that the normal thing you get every year. So the runny nose, the allergy type of sneeze, the sort of the itchy, watery eyes, the sort of the general allergy response. That's just your allergies. For COVID, what you're looking for is a cough that just doesn't go away. Not a cough because your nose is running forwards and backwards and you're coughing that up, but a cough that just continues. You're looking for a fever, and the fever is defined as anything over 100.4. So not 104, 104, that's very high, but 100.4. So 98.6 is normal. But if your fever is 100.4 or more, that's considered a fever, and that's a sign of COVID. So you're looking at a persistent cough, you're looking at a fever. We're actually seeing a lot of cases with a significantly reduced sense of smell, or sometimes an absent sense of smell, which sometimes patients will say, I can't taste anything. 90% of taste is smell, so that's sort of the same symptom. A neighbor of mine, a very good friend of mine, his wife called me this weekend. He couldn't smell the bacon she was cooking, for anything. And I think he has a case of COVID. I had him quarantine himself in the house away from his wife and children, and hopefully it'll be a mild case and he'll get over it. So you're looking for fever, you're looking for cough, you're looking for a change, a really bad change in your sense of smell, not just that stuffy nose from your allergies. And then you're looking for difficulty breathing. So you're looking for the inability to take in a big, deep breath and kind of really expand your lungs. It hurts or you can't really do that. Those are all sort of if I can say classic for something we've had for 3 weeks, but those are sort of the classic symptoms we're looking for.
Okay. And I've also heard of some folk symptoms, folk cures. And I was wondering if you've heard of these and whether they work. Like I've heard garlic, like hot garlic water is supposed to work.
Oh, man, maybe it keeps away the Draculas in your life. There's no data about the garlic water. None. But maybe if you don't like people, you're isolating anyway. Have as much garlic as you want, I guess.
And if somebody happens to knock on the door and you breathe with garlic, they probably won't stick around. So they'll go and leave you alone. So it could be a plan. Sounds like a good.
Although if you're eating garlic and you're wearing a mask, you might kill yourself. Is all I'm going to say about that.
That's not a good. That's another thing. Speaking of the mask and coming back to the mask, the other thing that I've seen just going out and about is, are people actually wearing the mask correctly? Because I've seen people, like I was talking to a friend of mine, and I remember we saw somebody, or at least I saw somebody, wearing the mask, and then they were eating their food. So it seems to me like if you're eating the food, you've got the danger of the crumbs landing on the mask, which defeats the purpose of the mask.
Yeah, so you got to take off your mask in order to eat, or pull it down at your neck in order to eat, and then kind of scooch it right back up. It should cover your nose and your mouth, and it actually has to be pretty tight across the bridge of your nose, so that it kind of keeps, your breath in and other air out. And if you wear glasses, if you don't do that, it will really fog up your glasses, like you can't really see. So I'm a surgeon, so I wear a mask all the time, so I know how to wear a mask without fogging everything up. But it's really funny. My husband normally does not wear a mask, and I had to pinch the nose part of his mask together so that it would settle properly so that he could breathe and see and protect himself with it. You were talking about other stuff people can take. People should be comfortable taking vitamin C, because that's really, Linus Pauling won a Nobel Prize for teaching us that vitamin C works against viral infections. And then you should think about taking zinc. So the vitamin C is about 1,000 milligrams per day. You can think about taking zinc, which is 50 milligrams per day, and that's a tablet. So you never want to put zinc inside the nose or up your nose because that will actually destroy your sense of smell permanently. And then you can try something called echinacea. There's some vague evidence about taking 400 milligrams of echinacea 3 times a day. There's a lot of evidence for the vitamin C and the zinc.
And what foods would have those in there if you don't want to take the tablets? Are there any foods that you would recommend that would have either the zinc in it or the vitamin C? Of course, vitamin C, I would think oranges, but there are others that might have vitamin C as well, and definitely the other element that you just named. But what foods could you have if you don't want to take the tablets?
So I would say, obviously, citrus for the vitamin C, leafy green vegetables, less processed food in the diet, more fresh foods, fruit and vegetables and meat. A nice high-protein diet is very helpful. And you want to try to reduce inflammation. So actually, other than the citrus for vitamin C, keep the rest of the acidity down because that will also reduce the inflammation in your body.
And one of the other things, I'm just curious, I've still got Kenyana on the line who's a young entertainer and everything, and there was rumors at one point that this particular virus was targeting more of the elderly and people probably in my age range because I'm 57. So, but definitely people that are in the 60s and above. But I think I'm hearing more and more that it's also impacting young people as well. Is that true? And is it impacting them across as much as it is some of our elderly citizens and those with what do they call it? Predispositions.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll tell you, unfortunately, we have in our country an infant who has succumbed to COVID virus. We have, unfortunately, lots of people in their 20s who have been exposed and have had either serious disease or even died from this. And of course, we've seen it in all age groups. And unfortunately, my dear, you and I'm just a few months behind you, we are actually in the higher risk age group. So we are seeing it in younger and older people. We were initially thought maybe we know it's worse, anything that affects your lungs is worse if you are a smoker or a vapor. So one of the best things you can do is put down your cigarette, put down your vape, like that should be the end of that. But we are seeing it in really healthy people where it affects this person really badly and the next person not so badly. So some of it is degree of exposure. So we're seeing, unfortunately, yet another young nurse in his early 20s just passed away from COVID. And that seems to be related to working in the hospital, having so much exposure to the virus. So one of the really good things that happened was that college campuses were closed, and so younger people from 18 to their mid-20s were essentially sent home so that there wasn't this big grouping where they were together, where they could spread the disease back and forth. I mean that was the reason it should have been to cancel spring break beach vacations. Unfortunately, we're seeing the result of not doing that. We did see a choir, 60 people in a choir in Washington State, and they were just singing. But when you sing, you project your voice, right? A good singer is going to really push with their diaphragm and really project their voice. And unfortunately, 45 of that choir group got COVID. So
wow.
Being in groups is really bad no matter what your age is.
Wow. And I've heard different things about exercise. I mentioned it earlier at the beginning of the show that I had gone to exercise, and it was in an area that was near a lake, and there was not a lot of people around me. But I figure that we do want people to exercise, but of course the virus could be outside. So are we encouraging people to exercise with these stay-at-home orders, or should they just be exercising in their house? Like trying to figure out some sort of